Glad you're with us today. This is Mike Harrington talking about building an exceptional business. And I just want to say that as we talk about the various parts of the STAR model and what's important, even though I'm talking about this one sort of at the end of this session, I will tell you it is probably one of the most important things that you need to be focused on as you build your organization. And let me tell you why. Because I looked at a lot of companies when I was in the merger and acquisition part of Western Union that were about ready to go in a ditch because they didn't have somebody at the top that was running the organization that had a good value system. The company didn't know what their value system was. They would cut corners, they would operate in gray areas, they wouldn't do things that were full of integrity, and that's really an important part of your business. I mean, you can have a great product, but if you don't act with integrity as you deliver it to the market, or if you don't act with integrity as you deal with your customers, you pick the area. This is something that'll get you off in a ditch very quickly. Some call it the culture of your company. People say, what's the culture in your company? Well, it is culture, but I think it's much more than that. It's what establishes the culture. It's how you lead the organization. I mentioned before that, the old Sicilian saying is the fish rots from the head down, and how true that is. If you're not working in an area that is black and white, and you're not providing good, solid foundation and values for your organization and the way you do business, then the rest of the people below you will follow your lead. I mean, unfortunately, as a leader, you have a lot of impact on how people behave and how they act. And you need to be focused on making sure that you do an outstanding job and build the values of your organization. It's people ask me, what are values? I said, well, it's kind of like what you do when nobody's watching. It guides your decisions and it sets the tone for your organization. It's really important that you understand all that. So, because you're the guy at the top, you're the guy or gal who's building this business. And when people say, what's the culture of your company? I always wanted people to tell me, oh man, your company, they could have done something a lot different than they did in this situation, but they did the right thing. I tell people, it's not just doing things right, it's doing the right thing. And if you're a leader of a company, if you're building a business or fixing a business, and usually you're fixing a business that doesn't have a good culture, you need to focus on that area because it's really important. I want to give you just one example that I can remember from past experience. You may remember a company called Enron in the United States. Enron was cooking the books. And, unfortunately, there are very large organizations that cook the books and try to, for sake of making their stock price go up, they give you bad information. And Enron got caught in the middle of that. And their accountant was a company called Arthur Andersen. Arthur Andersen was one of the top accounting firms in the country at that time. How many of you know what happened to Arthur Andersen? Well, as a result of Arthur Andersen agreeing that these books were right, they went out of business. So I'm just telling you, it doesn't matter what size of company you are, big or small, if you don't do the right thing, if you don't act with integrity, and you don't build your business with a good set of values, you could be a company that we talk about as an example in the future sessions on values. As we begin to talk about this next component of the STAR model, it's probably one of the more important segments that I'll be discussing today. It's really the value system of your organization. And I tell people the value system is the way that your company is tied together. It's sort of the way you do business, the way you go to market. It's the glue that holds the system together. And many important parts of the business that you'll look at as a leader, but you're the guy who will set the tone for the value system of your organization. I used to have a lady working with me, you heard me mention earlier, by the name of Liz Palmetti. Liz was a Sicilian woman, no nonsense, straight to the point. She used to say, the fish rots from the head down. And boy, was she right. The value system is your roadmap for success. And I always, when I walked into a new company and I looked at the leadership in that organization, I could almost tell immediately what the value system was in the organization. Were the people there doing business responsibly? Were they honest? Did they have integrity? And I'll just give you a couple of examples where I found organizations that I was inheriting where I'd been brought in to fix things. One organization, which shall remain nameless, was a place where there was a lot of shenanigans going on, just put it that way. People that were not married to each other and had been married to other people were going out with people that they had met at the office. And so what I did at the early part of that process is I began to look at ways that I could reinforce my value system and reinforce the values of the company. In that case, I began to do what I call public hangings. And public hangings basically are those things that you do when you go into a new organization, which tell people, hey, listen, things aren't going to happen around here the way they used to. I told people when I was coming in to fix an organization, I said, the reason I'm here is not because everything's going well. And usually part of that problem that was causing the problem for the organization not going well was the value system. And usually it was related to the leadership in that organization. So the public hanging basically was to find somebody that was doing something stupid or not in accordance with the value system, and you terminated them from employment. And that sounds kind of harsh and kind of rude, but once you've done that, once people see that happening, they begin to see, oh, this is serious. I want to get back in line with the values of this organization. So it was important to do those kinds of things early on in the process. So what about the value system? First of all, talent management. As the leader of the organization, you are the person that's going to determine how successful you will be. Now you say, well, I'm only one person. Yeah, but you're going to hire probably the key people in your organization that run the various functional areas like marketing, engineering, technology, etc. I always said, listen, we're going to feed the eagles and starve the turkeys. So what did I mean by that? Well, it meant that if we found good people, we would promote them, we would give them opportunities that we wouldn't give people that weren't good performers. So we basically fed the eagles and starved the turkeys. If people weren't doing well, they didn't get the resources that the other people got that were doing very well. You've heard me talk about a healthy churn. Jack Welch, who was one of the managers that people look at that ran GE successfully for a number of years. Jack Welch always had a 10% churn in the bottom part of his organization. Now, I don't know that 10% is the right number. I don't know if 5% is the right number. But as a leader of the organization, you need to be focused on those people that are not pulling their weight, not doing the job you hired them to do, and make sure that they're either put on a performance improvement plan or that they exit the organization. And what we also used to do in the talent management areas, we used to ID people early on. We'd see a young performer, a star performer coming up the ranks, and we would spend time on that person and give them the resources they needed to get better more quickly. And it was money well spent. It was an investment in their talent and an investment in our organization. The other thing that you need to do regularly with your organization in this area is do what I call a 360 review. And in a 360 review, what we would do is we would take people that you worked for, people you worked with, and people that worked with you that were reported to you, and we'd give them the opportunity to give you a rating on your management performance. We'd say, okay, how is so-and-so doing? Well, as an employee, I see this guy as a total jerk. And as a guy that maybe he reported to, the boss that he reported to, maybe he saw him differently. And maybe the people that he worked with saw him differently. But by getting a 360 review, you began to see that how this person was viewed by different levels and different parts of the organization. So talent management, very important, making sure that the value system focuses on talent management. Performance-based organization. Part of what you need to do as a leader of the organization is to make sure that your organization and your value system reinforces pay for performance. You're not just paying people because they showed up for work today. You're paying them because they performed, because they did what you asked them to do, and they did it in a spectacular way and maybe gave you more than you asked for. That's part of the DNA you're trying to create in your organization and the value system you're trying to create. I mentioned before, it's almost like getting into a new car. When you get into a new car, probably what you want to do is take it out on the road somewhere and see how fast it will go. If you're going into a new organization, you want to take your organization out and give it challenging goals and high performance goals and see how fast it'll go. I mentioned before with Western Union, when I came into that organization and I was in charge of the agent network nationwide, I challenged them to come up with 500 new agents that, above any number they'd done in the past. And even though they didn't quite get to the goal, they did very well against that challenging goal. You want to have openness. I mean, part of being a good value system is openness. Tell people where they stand. I mean, I always, unfortunately, part of your job as a manager and leader sometimes is to terminate people from your organization. There was never any doubt in my mind when somebody came into my office and I had to terminate them that they knew why they were there. I'd given them plenty of things in writing which sort of said, hey, listen, you need to improve your performance or you're going to have a problem here. And by the time they got to me and I sat across from them and said, hey, listen, we're going to make some changes, and one of them directly impacts you, I knew that they knew why they were there. There was never any doubt. So openness is really important. Tell people where they are regularly. Tell them good and bad news. Where were some parts in organizations where we weren't doing that well? And I would pull them all into a meeting and I'd say, hey, listen, guys, we're not on track. We need to get better at what we're doing. We need to figure out how to get more customers in the door. We need to figure out how to retain more customers. I mean, all these things that are important to you as a leader and a businessman, I would tell them, and I would tell them very openly, and I would tell them regularly. I mentioned before at Jackson, we had a monthly meeting where I spilled the beans. I told everybody, here's how we're doing. And, some people criticize me for that. They say, well, why are you telling everybody what we're doing? I said, well, guys, they're the ones that impact how we're doing. Why wouldn't you tell them? So anyway, as your organization builds or as you're building out a new organization or fixing one, make sure people know where you and the organization stand on all important areas. Process improvement. I was never satisfied. Now, that's a trait that I have. I mean, I'm impatient. And when people would ask me, well, what are you trying to improve on when they were interviewing me for a job, I'd say, well, I'm impatient. Now, I didn't view that as a negative. They may have, but I always said I'm impatient. I'm going to give you an example of that. My wife asked me to plant a garden, and she said, plant corn. I said, okay, corn takes so many days to germinate and so many days to sprout. So I went down and bought little corn sprouts because I was impatient for the corn to germinate and sprout. So I bought corn that had already sprouted. And that's kind of what you want in your organization. You don't want people to be willing to wait. They're never satisfied. I talked before about Six Sigma. When we were taking X number of days to get a product to market, we measured, okay, if we could take 20 days off that, and it was $1,000 a day, for example, we could make $20,000 more if we figured out a way to shave the time that it took from sales order to delivery of the product. And so really important for you to create in your organization a focus on achievement and getting things done quickly. And so that's kind of an important process improvement is really what the topic is there. So next thing you want to do is focus on the customer. I always get a little worried when people would stay in their office and try to direct traffic. I mean, I had managers that were this way, and I say, listen, what are you doing in the office? Well, I've got this report and that report to do. And I said, listen, where the action is happening is out with customers. Go out with your salespeople. Go out with your organization. Talk with customers directly. I would force them to go out. If they weren't doing that, I would say, listen, you've got in your goal and your annual objectives, you have 10 customer visits to make this year. And I was worried if I had to put it in their objectives if they weren't doing it on their own. But the people that you want in your organization and the value system you're trying to create are really customer focused. They never forget who pays their check. They always keep, you always as an organization keep no more than 5 layers between you and the customer. You create customer feedbacks and you make sure that customers can tell you how they're feeling about your product or your service. I may have mentioned before that at Hillside Cabin Rental Business, there is a survey at the end of every person's stay where they rate us on how was their stay, how were the furnishings, how was the facilities. I mean, there's different things that they give us a value on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being, hey, it wasn't so great, or 5 being it was excellent. And I give them the opportunity to give us that kind of information all the time. Create an air in a value system where decisiveness is encouraged. You got to have people that are willing to pull the trigger. You want people in your organization that are willing to make tough and courageous decisions. Now, you don't want to have people that are just flying off the handle and doing stupid things, but you want them to be able to make tough decisions. So make sure you're hiring the people that can make the decision. I used to have a thing, as I mentioned before, on a little card. I had 10 principles that I thought were important, one of which was 80% and go. I always told my lawyers, listen, you guys can be 110% and go because you're the ones that could get me in trouble and I could go to jail. But everybody else around here, 80% and go. You'll never be criticized if you make a decision that happens to be wrong if you had 80% of the information and you made it. So, let people make decisions. Let people stub their toe once in a while. Don't vacillate. Don't get people who can't make a decision in your organization. There are a lot of people like this who have trouble deciding, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do now? I would say make sure you got people in your organization and a value system that says, hey, it's okay to make decisions. Action versus analysis. If you don't wait for 100% of the details, you generally will move faster in the market. And I always told people, listen, there's an opportunity, a window of opportunity that we have that we may miss if we wait until we have 100% of the facts. And, you get people in your organization like accountants and lawyers, they always want to have more than 80%. And I tried to encourage them to be not only good accountants and good lawyers, but also be good business people. And I got some of them convinced that they should be moving ahead much quicker. So courage is required. I mean, you need to have people in your organization that are courageous, that are not afraid to make decisions. And if they feel this is the right thing to do and it's been analyzed properly, let them move ahead. So if you wait too long in that area, the people will move ahead of you. The competitors will move ahead of you. Okay, so next was moving to market and the speed in which you move to market. I've talked about that. We'll talk a little bit about integrity. One of the things that will get you crossways with me and any organization is if you don't do things in a forthright and honest fashion. I always told people one of the little things I had on my 10 principles to operate by were don't operate in the gray area. Always operate in black and white. Now, there are things that you can do in business that may be short-term successful. They may help you short-term, and they may help you do something short-term, but in your heart of hearts, it's not the right thing to do. And I always told people, listen, our company and our brand are far more important than you making a short-term decision that will impact that integrity, impact the integrity of our brand. The Western Union brand was worth millions and possibly billions of dollars. And we were very careful about companies that we bought and value systems that we looked at that were not in line with our own. I'll give you an example, personal experience. I was making some investments with a guy in personal investments in various markets. And we were doing okay. We were making some investments. We were making money. Everything was going fine. But I found out through the grapevine that this particular person had some baggage in their history that they didn't tell me about. And I sat down with them at lunch and I said, hey, listen, I've heard through the grapevine that you've got some baggage you may not be proud of. He goes, oh, yeah, I meant to tell you about that. It was whatever it was. And I said, well, okay, I'm not going to do business with you anymore. He said, what do you mean you're not going to do business with me? We made money on these deals. I said, listen, money is a very small reward. My own personal brand, when I put my name, Mike Yarrington, on something, I want it to be the best. And so I can't do business with you because you lack integrity. And so I would tell that person, I'm not working with you anymore. And he didn't believe it, but I quit working with him and I don't do business with him today. So anyway, there's lots of things that you need to work on in the value system. There's just a variety of things, talent management, performance-based, openness, process improvement, customer focus, decisiveness, action versus analysis, integrity, risk-taking, team building. All those things are important as you build out your organization. Make sure the value system you create for your organization or one that you're building in an organization you're trying to fix is really top shelf. That's it for today on values.